Yeah, so as probably preaching to the choir here, we've all seen that Pocket Cubes are promoting a lot more people actually getting into space with the lower cost of launch. We've opened up a lot more doors. CubeSats did help a lot of people, but with a €100,000 launch mark, that's still really steep for like a lot of countries and a lot of people who just want to start and get into the game. So yeah, something that we've all seen here is Pocket Cubes are helping a lot of that. So to learn more how we can include more people, it's probably good to start on how did you guys actually get started in your projects? Like what made you want to do Pocket Cubes?
Would you like to start?
Yeah, okay, so I will start. So I started building Pocket Cubes and then build up like a team after I saw that Romania didn't have a satellite into space. So I said, I can make that possible maybe with a Pocket Cube. So yeah, this is how I started.
Actually, we started just over 6 months ago, and I joined 5 months ago. So, which means I was like in the process that I just got to see, okay, what are the pros and cons of choosing the size? And our first satellites in TalTech were CubeSat sized, but why we chose a smaller size this time is, first of all, yeah, the cost, absolutely. And as I also mentioned in our talk, pretty much every cent is counted. Now, especially with the energy crisis, everything is being cut down as much as possible, which makes the smaller size like no-brainer. And the whole cost of launching absolutely smaller, but also the development. And you can have a little smaller team. So everything's already in the team, more organized also, which makes it just quicker and more efficient to build.
I myself, the very first time I found out about Pocket Cubes was actually from Alba Orbital, because they had already been talking to the Space Center at Bradford when I joined. Before that, I was only aware of CubeSat, but Pocket Cubes seemed like a very logical next step in terms of making things accessible, cheap enough, so that people can do something with them. And also, in my mind, they feel a bit like the big brother version of CanSat, which, again, in my personal opinion, is a wonderful way of introducing young people to satellites.
So now that you've started to embark on your sort of space missions, how would you, or what are you looking to achieve with your missions, and how would you recommend people get started in the first place?
So from this point, after sending the first satellite to space, we are planning to build much more complex missions. But first of all, we have to prove that it is possible. I suggest for the guys that are just starting right now, they should never give up. Yeah.
I guess my ambition in this project comes from a disappointment that there's so much potential in our country and nobody uses it to its full extent. There are so many incredibly intelligent children who simply don't have these opportunities because things tend to go quite slowly. So yes, as we've said, our purpose is to prove that these things are possible even when it seems impossible, because all the administrative aspects are incredibly difficult. And how to get started? Getting started is not as difficult as not giving up halfway through when you're just exhausted. But, yeah.
think we got started just from the fact that we only have pretty much one aerospace club in our uni. And we have Formula student, we have the Solar Ride car, which is just a car with as little weight as possible and has solar panels on top, so I just want to go on it in desert as far as possible. But really didn't have aerospace projects, so that's what we got into the satellites at first. And that's exactly what attracted me. And I was just looking at some things, okay, Formula, some robots, and that's not really my thing. I just want to go a little higher, And that's exactly when it clicked. I saw an email, and I thought, okay, that's pretty interesting. They're starting a new project. And this time it's going to be something more for my scope. It's a satellite of some sorts. And I think those things, they usually are not in our perspective because they're just up in the sky. Nobody really sees them on an everyday basis, right? You can see formulas are racing down the circuit. You can see some boats, for example, automated boats driving up and down the river. But nobody really sees the satellite. So I think the kind of thing that you do in uni also has to start just from somebody's imagination that there could be this project just from students. And also as example from here, not only in universities, you can also start a lot sooner. So I think all of those things considered, we have to say that this is all for students as well. We don't have to only limit ourselves with professionals, and that's really important with those smaller kind of satellites also.
On the topic of not limiting ourselves, something that a point I would like to make on getting started is that there is a lot of space in space, and space isn't just for engineers or for people making satellites. Space and spacecraft, the ones whizzing around our planet and the ones whizzing around our solar system, they have an effect on our daily lives in multiple ways. And people can get involved in that in all sorts of different ways, whether they're interested in data, whether they're interested in, say, archaeology, whether they're interested in climate. So it doesn't have to be limited to just building satellites. If you're curious and you're wondering how our world works and how we can find out more about it and how we can hopefully take better care of it, I firmly believe that, yes, space is for you.
Yeah, I really liked your point about saying that how space is for everyone, and there is more space in space. Yeah, from that respect, it's not just engineers. We're ultimately sending these things to try and improve lives on Earth. Whether it be trying to respond to natural disasters or connect, devices in agriculture. We're all here because we're trying to bring that data back to Earth to help our lives. And I've seen firsthand the kind of impact you guys have had in Romania when I went over. You guys got all over the news, which was fantastic. That was huge news. And yeah, I also visited the TwoSpace team while I was out. They're here today. They brought about 12 people over from Romania. They've also had a big high school competition, pretty much quite inspired by these guys. And there was about 100 people all building pocket cubes just at high school level, which is going to be fantastic for the future of Romania. And I've seen that in different countries as well. For example, when Muzaffar started his, he launched the first satellite with us on SpaceX in 2022. I went to Turkey and he was like a little celebrity out there. A lot of people knew him and knew of Alba, which is really cool. Yeah, but a lot of universities started to take place. So it's really just trying to inspire people and just trying to show off that this kind of stuff is possible. And hopefully, in Estonia, people will follow in your footsteps a lot more. But when you were first starting, were there any sort of missions that inspired you? For example, I see when people are first trying to get to grips with stuff, obviously open source is a great way to try. And even the satellite guys, Zachi's here today from Israel, and yourself, you're quite involved with open source. What sort of role do you think open source has in actually trying to promote STEM and just more equal access to space?
Yeah, well, the main point about open source that I personally like is that you can see how things are done, and I myself learn very well by example, by saying, oh, this is how you did this is how I can then modify it. And then other people, like different people learn in different ways, but that's one strength that I see, is that you can see how something is done, you can modify it, and you can tinker with it. And I think tinkering in the sense of prodding things and seeing what happens, and then maybe ending up with a bunch of spare parts, is quite important for young people, because it teaches them, it helps them realize that they can be creators, they can make things themselves, and get the satisfaction that comes with, I built this, I made this thing is actually going into space, rather than just be consumers. And again, open source helps build community, helps people find peers, helps people find collaborators, and at the end of the day, like again, I'm a sci-fi fan, and I do like Star Trek's vision of everyone working together, if you will. So, yeah, a bit idealistic, I imagine, but.
I think that one part of it is the open source software. Another part is just the knowledge how to use it also. And that's really kind of thing that we also have to look into it and not look past this important part, because we're kind of in a field that's like, yeah, let's be honest, closely military related. And a lot of the things that we're looking at is either military or private sector, which is both of them are not really keen to share their knowledge. So that's also a thing that we have to address at some point. Those things, for example, in mechanical engineering, in other industries, for example, are widely valuable, but the space industry is kind of lagging behind, in my opinion. There are also projects that are starting to put more information in place in internet or other things that we can look into. But one part of it is software, and the other part is how to actually use it, how to get the community behind it and get this thing going off the ground.
So open source satellites can, they can give you like a direction, and they can also teach you a lot. So you can see like components from different satellites that are open source, and you can understand how they work without prototyping your own, and this is really good.
It's undeniable that any such resource is immensely helpful, especially as it already has been said, since this is a domain where you don't really have that much so many explanations, and you don't have like a step-by-step guide necessarily. And in our experience, you come to a point where you just look around and like nobody can help you, so you have to look for your own resources, obviously. So these things and having a community.
It's really, really helpful. So one thing that just came to my mind is, I would argue that without things like, say, the Arduino framework and ecosystem pioneering open source hardware, we might not be here, like at this event here today, because that was really sort of like a step change in people realizing that they don't have to keep their design files, their hardware, all secret and all very closed. When I was an undergrad many years ago, the only way you could get started with any sort of embedded programming was to get find somehow very expensive development board with a big microcontroller, and then try, like, essentially find how things work by trial and error. There was no ecosystem, there was no support, there was nothing to enable the fast iteration, the fast innovation, the fast sort of people trying new things and sharing how their new things work so that others may learn from it. So yeah, in a way I would argue we are here today because new space in these smaller satellites have been enabled by people championing open source hardware.
Yeah, so what I've kind of noticed from here is like, it's pretty surreal, but like as our technology advances, our world is getting smaller in the sense that, you know, it's incredible to see so many people here from all different parts of the world just trying to share experiences with each other and help each other build, and open source is a big part of that as well. And now I think would be a really good time for someone to try and make kits as well, just to try and like help out with that. Do you guys have any ideas for what would make like a good kit?
As an electronics engineer, if someone can make a really wonderful off-the-shelf mechanical subsystem, I will love you forever.
Maybe we can help with that. We have like 11 people in our team of mechanics, and all the other teams are like 1 or 2 people.
Okay.
Maybe we can work on it.
Yeah.
Hit me up later.
Honestly, being so like at the beginning of these things, I don't even know how we could help. We obviously are the ones who need help right now, but such a kid would be just ideal in these situations instead of having to scramble for information on the internet. So let's pray to God we're going to have one someday.
Yes, so I think that the guys from ROMSpace offer some really interesting kits that you can test out. This is all I know about this.
I wanted to add that there are also very interesting like learning kits from, for example, Nepal, and we have also used those because in our university we don't have any degrees, or like the same thing pretty much with Romania. All the industry is like just starting off, so the knowledge pool is quite low. When you get actually your hands on something physical, like this training kit of like full pretty much functioning satellite, and you can just feel it in your hand, it's like right there, and test everything out. This is like a huge help also, that you can have some satellite fully assembled and there, just try it out.
On a slightly more serious note then, kits will be great. Another thing that will be great is, again, individual components and subsystems, but then we need to be very, very careful not to end up in a very fragmented space. So, for example, the telecoms industry now is moving towards something called Open RAN, where the idea is that you can mix and match hardware from different providers, different vendors, and they all have like common interfaces, common APIs. So I'm not sure how exactly that can work and how exactly that can happen. Ideally, it will be community-driven, but if we can all agree on, say, how onboard computers talk to, I don't know, say the energy subsystem, then we can start making kits and making individual subsystems that are available for other people.
Okay, so we'd just like to thank you guys all for like being part of this panel. So I figured I myself have asked enough of my own questions, so I'd like to kind of open the floor to see if there's anyone who'd like a question. There's Joe.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences, because having been there, I know what you're going through. My question is to all of you. Oh, thank you. My question to all of you is, what was the high point of building your satellite, but counter, what was the low point?
What was the high point and what was the low point? So far, again, said that I've been in the program for like less than 6 months. I can answer from this first 6 months that maybe the high point is when you get on board, and the low point comes when you understand that yet there's like a lot of textbooks on like some basic things, but when you actually get to the big level, how to integrate all the things, you just really have to like learn on your own. What about other guys? What has been the high points, low points?
So the high point of our project is that we learned a lot and we have understood things that we would never understand if we haven't worked on this project. The downside is that, of course, you have to work very hard and you have to do this all the time, yeah.
The first high point, I guess, was when someone literally cornered me in the hallway of my high school and was like, do you want to work on a satellite with us, the first Romanian satellite? And as was already said, like the initial enthusiasm, it really gets you going. And I guess after we passed our integration tests in Spain, we expected something like a 5% success rate, and we got a 95% success rate, and that was really a really great moment. But the low point is when you realize why so many people give up, because once again, the administrative parts of this were so much more difficult than we had expected. Like, you really think that the actual programming would be the most difficult, but then you get stuck in red tape and you're like, no, I can't. But obviously you have to push through, so it was unexpected, but definitely very real.
So, I have similarly only recently joined, so we've not yet reached our high point, or at least I've not yet reached my high point, which hopefully will be once we eventually launch and get data back. I do agree with the low point being the licensing and administration. When I got an email from, apologies if there's anyone from Civil Aviation Authority here, but I got an email one time saying, oh, you've not told us enough, so we can't answer whether or not you can actually launch. So that was a bit of a, yeah. Well, that also passed, so.
Thank you. Cool. So is there anyone else who'd like to ask some questions? I know we've got some people who are like of a similar age, like about 17, hoping to build their own satellites. We've also got some people who are like thinking and kind of flirting with the idea of making kits and things. So is everyone quite happy with the answers, or anyone want to ask any questions? If not, we shall continue to lunch, and I would like to thank all the panelists for being a part of it, and yeah, give them a round of applause.